Ciao and welcome back to my channel. And today what I want to talk to you about is a question that I received a few days ago by someone. And the reason why I want to tell you about it is because a lot of people ask me this thing. And the question is, how can I choose what I want when the people that I love don't approve of it? Now, before giving you my answer, I'll tell you why this person asked me. Because maybe not all of you know me, but my job, what I do, also consists in helping people to have all the elements they need in order to create the life that they want. And making the right decisions for yourself, that's a very important aspect of creating the kind of life that you deserve and that you want and that will fulfill you. And in my life, I had to make a lot of decisions, and as everyone, and some weren't the easiest. And thinking about the question that I was asked, so how can you go for what you want also when others don't approve of it? I went back immediately to one situation that happened some years ago now, but that for me was really the moment in which I realized how important it was to really pursue what my heart wanted over someone else's approval. That happened when I was 19. And you need to know that when I was young, I was always the good girl. So at times I was a little bit naughty, but not that naughty. So I was usually very kind, very nice, very good. And everyone thought, like when she's so obedient, do you say that? Diligent, I was good at school. So like some people right now could say boring, but it wasn't boring. I just was a good girl. And my parents were used to that. So they were used to seeing my grades, my marks very, very high. They were used to seeing me just sharing with them what I wanted and usually agreeing with what they wanted for me. So I started university, and in Italy, university, it's a big deal. So either you go to university or you're a failure in most people's minds. And given that I had very, very good grades, everyone started expecting my university career to be like amazing, and they had already planned it out, everything. Like they knew exactly what I would do. I started international relations, so they thought that I would go and have a diplomatic career, work maybe in the UN or something like that. And it's not that I didn't want that, but I wasn't yet very, very sure about it. And then one day I was at school and already had my doubts, and a diplomat came. And this diplomat came and we had the opportunity to interview him and understand a bit, okay, what is your life like? What do you do on a daily basis? Not just the idea that you may have a diplomat, but really his life. And he was very kind, very nice. He answered all our questions. And then at a certain point, his face turned a bit sad. And he said, you know what? What is a bit disappointing and sad is that in those four walls, you find amazing solutions to important problems, but you know that they will never become a reality. And in that moment, I was, wow, do I really want to spend my life finding solutions that will never be applicable in life? That's not changing the world. And so that thought stayed with me for a while, and I realized that that wasn't my path anymore. And at a certain point, I understood what I really wanted to do, which was to become an instructor with Genius in 21 Days, so help people with their results in terms of learning, in terms of life, and it was fantastic. I knew that that was my path. I realized, when you feel inside, not just the butterfly of the novelty, but the alignment with your mind, your heart, everything, you know that it's the right thing for you. I was in that situation, but there was one little problem, and the problem was that my parents didn't really see it like me. So when I told my parents that I wanted to become an instructor and pursue this career rather than going on with university, they were extremely against it. But why? Because becoming an instructor meant not necessarily leaving university, but for sure giving much less focus to university, starting to have a job that wasn't safe at all initially, starting a very tough training in order to get to this role and not knowing how it would go. They were just scared. It was something new, it was something unknown, and it was something that they completely didn't expect from me. They could have expected it from my brother, from my cousins, from everyone else in the family, but Julia. And so it wasn't easy because they were very against it. And given that we had a close relationship, I really thought it through, because it wasn't easy for me to choose to do something that was so obviously against what my parents wanted. And I know that there's a lot of people that are in a similar situation, because when we create a very nice relationship with our family, our parents are more experienced than us. And so we tend to believe that they know best. And in some things they do. But when it's about our choices, it's not always the case. But on the other side, there's this fear of not being approved of that is there. And the reason why it's there is that not just our love part needs that approval, but it's something that we developed for survival reasons. And I want to tell you a story about this. This is a story that I read in a book, which you need to absolutely read if you haven't yet. That's called 10 Types of Human by Dexter Diaz. And it's an amazing book in which this wonderful author that has done tons of things in his life shares about his research on what parts of us, inside us, affect our decision making, our life, the things that we do, the reactions we have. And one of these types of human is called the ostracizer. In that chapter, in that part of the book, there is a very interesting anecdote about gobies. So the goby is a fish that lives in the coral reef. And now, if you are into gobies, apologies if I make any mistake in terms of precision, but I want you to get the point of the message. So gobies live in communities. And the reason why they live in communities is that the ocean outside of the coral reef is very dangerous. The community itself allows the goby to feel safer, because as a community they can survive. And so far, so good. As a human being as well, we create tribes, we create environments in which we can be safer. Now, what happens to gobies? The gobies are so community oriented that there's always one that's the biggest one. And they have found out that there's a special number, a magic number, that's 0.93. What is it? When there's a goby that is becoming too big, so it's almost as big as the biggest goby, so almost on a proportion of 1 to 1, so it's 0.93, the goby realizes that it's very, very dangerous. Why? Because if it becomes bigger than it should be, the biggest goby will be upset. They will need to fight, and one of them will be kicked out of the tribe. So, instinctively, without even knowing exactly, they don't have a meter to measure the size, okay? But whenever a goby gets to 0.93 of the size of the biggest goby, they stop eating. They just starve themselves. Why? Because unconsciously, they know that they don't want to become bigger. Because if they are bigger, the risk is to lose the approval, to lose the community, to lose the safe space, and to end up living in the ocean and dying. And when I read this story, I really thought about how interesting it is that they do it instinctively. So they don't measure themselves, but they just know that they can't become too big. Their size cannot grow too much. Otherwise, they won't be accepted anymore. And this is something that as human beings we do all the time. When we realize that we won't be approved of, we stop being ourselves. We stop making the choices that we would like to make. When we realize that saying that thing will bring us to run the risk of not being accepted, we don't say it. When we want to make a choice that may end up in losing that connection with the community, we don't make it. On one side, the easiest of thing would be, okay, just follow your heart. How many times do we hear that? And on one side, it is right. So if we know that our heart is aligned and that we are not wanting this new thing just because of other fears that we're not going to discuss in this video, but in the next videos, that's fine. The problem is that at times people become extreme on the other side. So as soon as they want something, they completely ignore the external feedback just because, I feel that I want it, so regardless of whatever anyone else says, I will just go my own way. As usual, we need to find some balance, because when fear is there, it's never there to be ignored. Fear is there to show us something. If I am afraid of losing someone's approval, it may reflect either my uncertainty towards a certain choice or my uncertainty towards the relationship that I have with those people. It does reflect something, otherwise I wouldn't be scared. That's the role of fear in our life, to point an arrow to something that otherwise we wouldn't be seeing in that moment. So, what do? You look at your fear, you listen to it, you understand what it is trying to tell you, and then you choose listening to your heart. So once you figure out what the role of fear is in that moment, just follow your heart. Because remember, if someone loves me less because of the choices that I make, was it real love? By the way, I did become an instructor, and initially my parents didn't agree at all, but then they came around. And they did because they saw how happy I was, how successful I was becoming, so all their fears disappeared. And that's what happens when you decide to follow your heart rather than someone else's approval. Also because remember that love and approval have nothing to do with each other. I can love someone and maybe not really agree with all their choices, but if I force someone to change who they want to be, who they are, their dreams, just because they don't match mine, I'm not loving. Love is allowing people to feel free to be themselves, to make their mistakes, to build their life. We can share our opinion, of course, but then the freedom of the choice is theirs, not ours. And my parents now are super happy about what I do, and I wish the same for all of you. But you know why it happened? Because I was fine in accepting that maybe they would never agree with what I did. And I was happy anyway, and I loved them anyway. Thank you for watching this video. If you have questions or considerations, please leave a comment below and feel free to contact me anywhere. I'll leave all my links in the description so that you can find me there. I can't wait to see you in the next video.